And now it's Deborah Cobelt Live and the Sarasota Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Sarasota podcast and also Deborah Cobelt Live. And I am pleased to introduce Kt Curran, who wrote and directed this fabulous film, Bridge to the Other Side. Thank you so much for joining us, Kt.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Deborah.
You know, some pretty wonderful accolades you're getting for this film. Out here in Los Angeles, Best Feature Film for the Lady Filmmakers Film Festival. You also got the Best Florida Feature at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. And soon you will be showing the film at the Sarasota Film Festival, which I am so excited about because they are also celebrating their 25th anniversary. So congratulations to the Sarasota Film Festival.
We're thrilled. In fact, we filmed a lot of the movie here in Sarasota, even though it's set in a fictional town. Anyone from this area will recognize so many locations. It's a beautiful, beautiful area for filmmaking. It loves filmmakers. And we are on the world-class beaches, on the bridges, and private homes, and mansions, and fire stations. And so it's going to have a lot for local residents to appreciate when they see this movie.
Oh, I got so excited because, you know, I grew up in Sarasota and we're getting a little place in Sarasota. And I love it there. My heart is in Sarasota and always is, which is why I started this podcast, right? The Sarasota podcast. But of course, the film opens with Max, one of the characters, and she's on the Ringling Bridge. And of course, I thought, oh, the bridge. And I got excited, even though it's a fictitious town.
Yes.
Someone from Sarasota watches this and we really, really relate to it, not just because of where it's shot, but also because of what the film deals with, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, it's a fictional film, but it was actually created out of 150 interviews that I did during the pandemic about how the pandemic was impacting the mental health of our community. And I interviewed parents, therapists, psychiatrists, firefighters, a lot of first responders about how we were all grappling with this intense change that we've been living under for the past 3 years. And there's actually been an increase, 200% of mental health calls and concerns, particularly with young adults and people of color and first responders, and with the secondary trauma of first responders, nurses, police, firefighters dealing with the problems that have been brought up and exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. And so all of that became a story, Bridge to the Other Side, a story about hope, about finding the light at the end of the tunnel, about getting to the other side of the bridge. And it became a way to celebrate our community, our strength, our resilience, and our beauty. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. And we have a lot of big drone shots, you know, soaring over Sarasota, both at over the beaches, over the bridges. You can get a sense of the majesty of this community. And I know why you love it. I love it too. And it's wonderful to celebrate it with film.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was a reporter at the Sarasota Herald Tribune. And one of my first assignments was I used to go out with the police officers, right? I was on the cop beat and I went out with the firefighters. So what they went through then, I related to now in this film, right? The trauma that they have to see. And to your point, it's multiplied, right? Through COVID, through more people just dealing and expressing themselves through what's going on with their anxiety, with their grief, with everything. Could you give us some highlights from the film? Because you sort of interweave it with around this one person who works at the fire department, Max, who is a woman, by the way.
Yes, thank you. I'm ashamed to say, really, being in the arts, in theater and
Yeah.
film, I always thought of as actors and storytellers as first responders because we're very attuned to,
Yes.
the community around us and telling these stories and bringing them to life. But I never, until I really delved into the life of first responders, our nursing staff, our hospitals, our firefighters, police, the sacrifice they make on our behalf, and they don't get the applause. They don't get to
Mm.
stand on stage or on a red carpet and have everyone cheer about the wonderful job that they did. They don't win the awards, but they are risking their lives every day on our behalf. And they don't like to call themselves heroes, but they are very much our
Of
local heroes.
course.
And I worked very closely with two firehouses, both of whom opened up their stations. They said, "We're here for
Wow.
you, so of course we want to help you." And they were so generous. And this was at the height of the Omicron wave. And so we were all masked up and doing regular COVID testing. And we would be talking to the firefighters, and they would get a call. And within 2 minutes, they are on that fire engine and off to save lives. And they
Mm.
instantly, their demeanor would change, and they were out the door within 2 minutes. There's a big clock on the wall that's counting down, and they have to be ready to go. And that level of preparedness and readiness was so inspirational to
Mm.
see. And so as I started doing all these interviews, the story started narrowing in my mind to be a set in a firehouse. And it was about a
Ah.
young woman who loses her husband, who's a firefighter, due to COVID. And in fact, as I did my research, we lost many, many police officers and firefighters through the pandemic because they were our first responders. They were going
Right.
in, taking people to the hospitals, trying to suit up with their PPE. But in those early days of the pandemic, they didn't have the resources to protect themselves. And so we did lose people, and there was a lot of trauma and stress. They couldn't go home. They were sleeping in their garages so as
Yeah.
not to affect their families and children. And so it all just started resonating with me very deeply, the sacrifice that they made. And no one was really talking about it. A little bit on the news, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of minutes at the end of a news story. And so I began crafting my film about these firefighters and setting it and about crisis response.
There was a real sense of duty that we got through this film. Showing up without giving too much away, showing up where there was a mom who didn't quite know what to do with her teenage daughter, right? How to reach her. So she would call out for help, right? For a first responder. There were so many moments, someone who had overdosed or not overdosed, but clearly could have overdosed. And
Yeah.
once again, tackling issues with drugs, with mental health, with anxiety, with someone, let's just say, who was walking over the bridge. In the beginning, we see that, and also toward the end of we see that, and it wasn't exactly a leisurely walk. Let's just leave it right there.
Right.
It was surrounded in someone who was just having a really difficult moment. So did you see a lot of this as you did your research? Did you go out with them and experience what was happening in the community?
Yes, I did. And I also spoke deeply with people from, as I said, all walks of life. And it was
Yeah.
I began to see these issues of grief, mental illness, addiction, are something that touches every family, no
Yeah.
matter race, gender, income. We all have somehow experienced these deeply traumatic events in our lives. And where do we find the strength? How do we cope? How do we move forward? How do we get to the other side of the bridge? How do we hold space for each other
Yeah.
and cope with these things? Like, I know both in Los Angeles recently, you've had a lot of traumatic weather events. We've certainly had that in Florida. In fact, two of the firehouses that of the fire department that we work with, they were lost in Hurricane Ian completely.
Oh.
And so we had first responders saving people whose own houses were underwater. And you don't think of that either. The person who's pulling you out of the storm is themselves experiencing trouble. And so where do we find that strength from each other? And that fascinated me as a storyteller, and the movie leads us to that place. Like, how do we find our way across the bridge so we can begin to live again, just as our country is now, like, is the pandemic over? Can we begin to live again? Can we go, are we safe? Those questions. And I find
Mm.
I see a lot of hope and a lot of things beginning again, and a greater appreciation for that which we took for granted.
Yeah, I like that you also touched upon PTSD. That's something that, again, I don't want to give too much away, but that the first responders talked about in your film. Let's just leave it there. And it was very touching for me to hear from some of them, even though this was a fictitious film, but you know that it was based in reality. So, and there's a moment in each part of the film that so many of us can relate to, which I thought was fantastic. I related to that from being a reporter, right? You're out on the street, you're seeing tragedy after tragedy. A home is falling over the cliffs. There's fires, there's hurricanes, there's earthquakes. You don't really think about it. And then all of a sudden, one day you stop and you say, what just happened? In a totally different way than first responders, because they're the ones responding to the chaos. We're just looking at it.
Well,
But there's something, go
I've
ahead.
spoken to many reporters like yourself, and
Yeah,
until they really stop and think, they don't
that's right.
realize the a lot of times cameramen who are watching things through the lens, and people interviewing people, you can see the trauma in the faces. And so thank you for the work that you've done getting these stories out to the world. It's a powerful and necessary thing, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily an easy thing. I spoke to some crisis responders in St. Augustine. We were just at the St. Augustine Film Festival, and they said it wasn't until they sat in the movie and could have a bit of detachment and watch their lives unfold that they were like, wow, this is all what has just happened to us, and they were very shook up about it and wanting to talk about it. And that's really my goal, is how can we
Yeah.
talk about these things and then get right back out there? Because if you don't talk about it, it's called the kindling effect, where these things can build up inside you that we push down and we numb and we avoid. But then one day you come home and you have a drinking problem, and you're getting a divorce, or you're feeling suicidal, or your problems have gotten too big. But if it's a kindling effect, a fire grows inside. And
Mm.
that's kind of what the movie is. Until that, don't let that kindling effect grow out of control. Take care now, talk about it, get help, so you can go back out again.
You formed Wingspan Productions, right? Tell us what that is. Why did you form it?
In the middle of the pandemic, I actually had another movie. It's called Surviving Lunch, which is on Amazon Prime. It's about school shooting and bullying. It's a narrative story about a young girl who comes to a Florida high school. It was right the year that the Parkland shooting happened, and all of us in Florida were very upset. Of course, whenever it happens in your community, it becomes real. And so I ended up making a movie about that. And during the pandemic, it was actually shown in Russia, of all places. And we were beamed into this theater in a remote town in Russia. And there were
Mm.
teachers, students, therapists in the audience doing a talk back with us at midnight. And they said that we were helping them understand the bullying they were seeing in Russia. And
Mm.
I was so moved that here we were in Florida. I had no idea about the war that was to come, of course, but now in retrospect, that film, became so vivid to me that film is a way for us to reach people through our
Mm.
storytelling all the way across the world, from Florida to Russia, from Sarasota to Los Angeles, to Canada, to France, that we can greet each other and share our stories and find some sort of a healing, an understanding. And so I
Right.
started a film company that at that time called Wingspan Productions, whose goal was to address the most vital issues of our time as they're happening. And it's daunting because, having a little bit of distance is helpful, but we worked very, very hard to bring this pandemic era story to life and tell it as it was happening to us all.
Yeah, but I love the way you think. I really do. I mean, you saw a need for not really just entertainment, but for trying to put a spotlight on what's going on in our world through filmmaking. And I love that you think that way because that's really your purpose with your films. I think that's incredible. And you weren't always a filmmaker, right? You've been an actor much of your life. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about your background. Yeah,
Well, I'm a professional actress. I lived in Atlanta, which is where I met my husband, who's also a
right.
professional actor. And I that was really my first love. My deepest love was acting. But I
Right.
began to see that through directing and writing, I could activate those same storytelling passions. And I started directing theater quite a lot, in addition to acting. And then about 10 years ago, that I realized that a lot of the young adults that I was directing were fascinated with cameras. They were always, I remember vividly when it happened. I was in a Barnes and Noble, and there was a young woman at one of the computers, and she was posing and looking at herself and holding in her cheeks, and I just stood there, and it was the first time I guess I saw a selfie face in
Right.
action. I was just like staring at this young woman, and I went, the world is changing. And
Oh my
all the
gosh.
young people just, I just started looking around, and I started bringing in cameras to rehearsal. And the minute I would bring a camera in, everyone would get focused.
Wow.
Everyone was awake. And I slowly started shifting and making small videos, web series, documentaries, and engaging people through the lens.
Hmm.
So
Okay, so have you like perfected your own selfie? Because when you and I were together and we were at lunch, I think we took a little selfie of ourselves, right? And that whole like sucking in your cheeks, I'm not quite
right.
sure why people do that. Like, but I
And
get
also
it,
the hands on the waist.
right? The hand on the waist and sort of the
Yes,
hand here. It's like, you gotta have to perfect it so that you look a certain way, right? But
right.
so have you perfected your own?
Unfortunately, I have not, because I'm usually the one behind the camera, but
Ah,
I'm certainly feeling the need as we do more and more on camera interviews.
that's very, very funny. So I love that. So you sort of morphed from being an actor, but once an actor, always an actor, right? Into writing your material and expressing what you're seeing out there. Was it kind of difficult to make the transition in terms of, getting together an entire crew? Because that's like a big thing.
Yes, it was because and despite great strides being made, there
Yeah.
are not a lot of females in filmmaking, female
Hmm.
directors, and so you don't
No.
have a lot of role models. Like here in Sarasota, there really aren't any female feature filmmakers that I can, have lunch with. That's one of the
Right.
reasons why it's always so engaging to go out to Los Angeles. I do a lot of work out there, a lot of my writing out there, and you just feel more of a sense of camaraderie with other people doing the same thing. It is growing. We have an amazing film department here at Ringling, and a
Yeah.
lot of young filmmakers coming in, a lot of whom I'm working with now. And but being a female on set with a mostly male crew, as wonderful as they are, there's a lot, you have to kind of fight to, there's a slightly different style. A lot of women, myself included, have a more collaborative style, a more, you know, uh, I don't know. It's just, it's different. And I found that with males in filmmaking, if they don't know how to do something, they will never say, I don't know how to do it. They'll fake it till they know. And females are usually much more honest. They'll say, oh, I don't know how to do that, explain, or I'll have to figure that out. Or they're just more straightforward. And so to be a little bit more male like, you have to, fake it a little bit in the technical.
Interesting. To your point with female directors, I believe, and please don't quote me on this, that 3% of the directors in Los Angeles are female. I mean, that's pretty small. Now, that number may have changed in recent years, but I do recall, even a year ago, reading that statistic. That's pretty low. So we have to get more of us out
Yeah.
there behind the lens, because I think very often you're right. To your point, we are collaborative, and sometimes I like to say this to my husband. I see things in all directions, my peripheral vision. right?
Yeah. Eyes in
I
the
can
back of the head, my mom used to say.
we definitely have eyes in the back of our
Yeah.
head, right? So, I just think as female directors, we bring a sensibility in a way, right? The way you did with your film. I mean, it was so well done and researched, yet there was a sensitivity to it that I and so many people I know saw the film related to. So we got to get more of us out there.
Well, thank
We really
you. You know,
do.
and it's something I have realized over the years doing this now is that at the beginning you're just aware of what you don't know, and
Yeah,
then I forgot, and I went, oh, I'm a professional actor, I'm a storyteller, I'm a playwright, I'm really great with young people, I'm very empathetic, I understand, and so a lot of these male filmmakers that were coming in with a lot of technical expertise did not have those skills. They didn't know how to tell a story. So
right.
they may have known frame rates and lenses and all these things that I've come to learn, but they didn't know how to, do a story or
Right.
pacing or energy or music or all those other things that really make a dynamic story beyond the technical. Of course, you want to have everything, and
Yeah.
that's what's so fascinating about it, adding the lighting and the sound mixing and the color correction and all those
Yeah,
things.
I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, particularly that, you also wrote the film. But I have a feeling you just wouldn't have it any other way. This is how your productions are, right?
Yes.
Incredible. You mentor young people too, right?
Yes, absolutely. I I'm very much I love working with young people because they're not at all jaded. Everything's ahead. They have so much belief in anything is possible. And so personally, I find it very energizing and inspiring and engaging. And there's nothing like seeing a young person thrive and succeed. So I'm always definitely mentoring them, writing them letters, inviting them on set, internships, things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And I'm the
I mean,
oldest teenager in the world.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about our beautiful Sarasota. I love
Yes.
how you and your husband met, right? How did you both meet?
Well, we both worked at a theater in Atlanta called the
Right.
Academy Theater, where he was the star and I was the apprentice. And so
Ah.
those backstage romances. And
Ah.
then he was doing a play called Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett that toured to the Van Wezel in Sarasota.
Right.
And I came with him through a theater tour, and he was rehearsing on Siesta Key Beach. He said, "This is just unbelievable. This is
Yeah.
be an artist in a community like this is phenomenal." And so he always
Yeah.
had this dream to come and live here in Sarasota. And when our daughter was born, we made that dream a reality and came. And it was a great place to raise a child, with
Yeah.
the weather, of course, and they can run around with out big, thick, heavy coats on and live healthy and be out at the beach and swimming and climbing and running and all dancing, all that kind of physical.
Yeah. Is there a favorite that you have about Sarasota? One of my favorites is I love downtown Sarasota, and I particularly liked it even before some of the large buildings went up. Right, it was so quaint and interesting, and it was just filled with authentic galleries, and I just think it's so special. There's so many little pockets. Could you share with us some of your favorites?
Yes, I also love downtown Palm Avenue and all the
Oh,
Spanish architecture and
yeah,
and the people really are quite special. I remember vividly during the pandemic because you know how much I love big cities, but during the
yeah,
pandemic I live on Siesta Key, which is this perfect island that has won best beaches in America for many, many, many years. It's crystal
yeah,
white sand, and I was walking along and I thought, of all the places to be during a pandemic, this is pretty good.
yeah,
Because you could be outside, you could
yeah.
breathe, you weren't, in a stuffy, tiny apartment like all my friends in New York, just so trapped in those apartments. And I felt for
Oof.
them so deeply, what they went through. And so I think there's a reason why so many people are gravitating to Florida, especially Sarasota. It's got a vivid art scene, which of course that's one of the biggest reasons why people love Sarasota. Our
Oh
theater,
yeah,
opera, dance, music, and restaurants. And so it's a big secret. There was MTV reality series that was recently. Have you heard about it? Siesta Key.
Oh yeah, of course. In fact, I think I was there. You and I have a friend together, right? Rod, and
Oh, we
he was a
love Rod. Yes.
right, and Rod was a photographer at the Sarasota Herald Tribune when I was at the Herald Tribune. So we've been friends like forever. And we were somewhere downtown Sarasota. I forgot the name of the place, and they were there filming Siesta Key. So sure,
Ah,
everybody knows about it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
oh, yes. And so I think that puts Siesta Key and Sarasota a little bit more on people's radar because we've had a big influx of
yeah.
people moving here.
I'm
A lot
not
of
sure if that's a good or
restaurants.
bad thing, right? I
I
don't know.
know.
It's I grew up close to the Ringling Museum, right around there near Sapphire Shores,
I
that whole
love
area,
that
and
area.
ooh,
Yes.
so do I. And I have to tell you, just a couple of years ago, right? It was, oh, I could easily pick up a place. It's like, not so easy anymore. It's almost like it's quadrupled in price. I'm thinking, I don't want to tell anybody about it. Let's
I
keep it quiet. But I think the word is out about this spectacular, beautiful, beautiful setting
It's just
of
like
Sarasota. It is very
Sarasota in
special.
Los
Yeah.
Angeles. I think people realize, oh, I want a place where I can be outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we both had really big explosions in real estate prices.
No, we did. And it's funny because I go back and forth to Sarasota and LA, as do you. And it's so funny. And we'll be texting each other, well, what's going on in Sarasota? Well, this and that. How's LA? This and that. And you and I sometimes were saying we should just swap lives for a little while. It's kind of
I
funny.
know. I think it would be a very funny comedy.
I think you're right. We really ought to talk about that. Any
Yes.
parting words that you want to say about the film, about the upcoming Sarasota Film Festival, and anything to our audience?
Well, first of all, I just want to say what a delight it's been to meet you, Deborah, through our friend
Yeah.
Rod. He's a wonderful photographer. He was our behind the
Oh,
scenes photographer for Bridge to the Other Side, and he came along
oh,
and he was up there on the bridge with us underneath in the firehouses, and just did a phenomenal job. And to find out that you two were old friends and had worked at the paper together, and then
yeah.
to have such a lovely time meeting in Los Angeles at our premiere, it's just been a delight. And I'm so happy to be on your podcast, and that you're going to have a Sarasota podcast now. And so
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
there's
here.
a lot of exciting new people in town it'll be fun to have them on your podcast and celebrate our town.
Absolutely. And your film, right? I think people are very excited about that it's going to be shown at the film festival, which is celebrating its 25th year. Any shout out you want to give about that or the film so
Yes,
that
we
people.
cannot wait. The Sarasota Film Festival opens the end of this month, and they'll be giving the official announcement. But you're actually the first one to hear that we will be a part of it, and we're thrilled to be a part of the 25th anniversary. It's a big deal. It's an
It is.
amazing film festival that has world class films from all over the world, and we're just honored to be a part of it. And my last film was actually in it. We had 700 people at our Sarasota screening for Surviving Lunch, and so we're
Wow.
really excited. Actually, I thought it looked like they were lined up down to Bradenton to see the.
Wow.
And so we won the audience award for best feature at for Surviving Lunch. So I'm really excited to bring Bridge to Sarasota Film Festival. The
Yeah, I think a lot. Go
Director
ahead.
Paul Ratner, wonderful, wonderful man, and his wife Petra worked so hard to create a really special festival experience. So I hope everybody comes out and sees all the films at the festival.
It's a spectacular festival, very friendly, incredible work there. So it's a real win. I love it. It's one of my favorite festivals, and I go to quite a few of them. So
Well, I hope
I
you'll
look.
come down.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely planning on it because
Oh,
actually I
good.
was supposed to be there about a week or two ago, and as you know, it's a lot of rains here in California, a
Yeah.
lot. And you're no stranger to rains. We don't have hurricanes, but it's something different. We have the mudslides and everything else, and we had some issues in our home, so I had to stay a little
Uh,
longer. So no, I'll be out there this month,
ah,
or at least I'm planning on it. So I look forward to seeing you and seeing the film again. And also, when will folks be able to see it out there on either Amazon, YouTube, whatever?
well, we've gotten a lot of interest for
Yeah.
we're touring it to national conferences right now on mental health because it deals with so many of the topics we discussed. it's
Hmm.
proven itself to be very valuable for behavioral health centers and staff and a lot of different people who want to be talking about these things as well as
Yeah.
crisis response. And so we're holding off a little bit. We've talked to a few producers and distributors, but we're just waiting till we see the best use of the film. But certainly I'm thinking by the fall it should be available on Amazon Prime or
Yeah.
Netflix, one of those streaming services.
Honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I saw the film initially, I said to you, this belongs in every school. So we know we're not alone. And again, you have a real cross section of issues going on in the film, teenagers, older people. Um, and it's very, very critical. It's very important, particularly with what's going on now. So well done. Very
Oh,
well done.
thank you so
Um,
much. It's
yeah,
just a
KT.
delight to talk to you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to seeing you down in our home in Sarasota.
Yes.
And yeah, so people, if you're down in Sarasota or not, travel to the Sarasota Film Festival later on this month and check out all the films, in particular Bridge to the Other Side, and check out our beautiful town of Sarasota. It's wonderful. And this film really is a very special place in my heart. I think it was very meaningful. So thank you again for doing that and putting a spotlight on what's happening in our society. So delight to have you, KT Curran, on the Sarasota podcast and also simulcast on Deborah Cobelt Live. We appreciate it. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then on all audio podcast platforms. So
It's
we
an
look forward to,
honor to
yeah,
talk to you.
absolutely. We look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you all. Spread the word. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.